is Timmy, and I want to tell you the scariest field trip I've ever been on. It happened a few years ago when my class went on a field trip to Blackwood Forest. It seemed like a normal day at first, but little did I know that things took a turn for the worst. The bus ride to the forest was long and bumpy. We were all excited, chatting and laughing. Our teacher, Mr. Johnson, told us that we'd be on our best behavior and stay with our buddies. We finally arrived to the forest, and it looked dark and mysterious, with tall trees that seemed to touch the sky. Our class split into groups, and my buddy, Jack, and I decided to explore the forest together. As we ventured deeper into the woods, we noticed strange noises, rustling leaves, snapping branches, and hooting owls. It made us a little nervous, but we kept going. We stumbled upon an old, abandoned cabin. It looked worn out, like it hadn't been used in years. We both got pretty curious, and us being the youngsters that we were, we didn't really think twice, so we decided to go inside. The door creaked open, and we stepped into the darkness. Inside, the air felt heavy, and the floor would squeak with every step. The walls were covered in peeling paint, and there were cobwebs in every corner. We heard the faint sound of whispering, like someone was trying to talk to us. Our hearts pounded in our chests as we looked around, trying to find the source of the voices. Then we saw it, a dusty old book lying on the table. It was open to a page that talked about a ghost haunting Blackwood Forest. Jack and I looked at each other in disbelief. We didn't believe in ghosts, but this was getting really creepy. As we continued exploring, we stumbled upon a hidden basement. The stairs creaked loudly as we descended into the darkness. The basement smelled musty. Our flashlights led the way into the darkness. There, we found something that made our blood run cold. A rusty cage with bones inside. The door slammed shut behind us. We were trapped. Panic set in as we banged on the door, calling for help. The whispering voices grew louder, and we felt like someone or something was watching us. Just when we thought all hope was lost, we heard Mrs. Johnson's voice outside. She had come looking for us when we didn't return with the rest of the class. With all her strength, she pushed the door open and rushed to our side. We hugged her tightly, relieved to be safe. Mrs. Johnson led us out of the cabin, back to the bus. We looked back at Blackwood Forest one last time, wondering about the secrets of that cabin. The ride back to school was quiet, and we couldn't help but shiver at the memory of what we had experienced. Since that day, I can't help but feel a chill every time I think about it. It was a field trip I would never forget, a real-life horror story. But the real horror of the story was the dead person in the cage. Who was he, and how did he get in there? We'll never know. But if I'm being honest, I never want to find out. My name is Janet, and I'm about to tell you the most scariest thing that ever happened to me. Way back in 5th grade, our school went on a field trip to a history museum. It was exciting, and I remember looking forward to it for weeks. The day arrived as we all got on the bus to head to the history museum. We were going to see a lot of interesting things and learn about history. When we arrived at the museum, our teacher told us to stay together and not wander off. She said the museum was big and we can easily get lost. I listened to her instructions carefully because I didn't want to get in any trouble. As we walked through the museum, I was amazed by all the artifacts and paintings. There were ancient statues, colorful paintings, and even dinosaur bones. It felt like we were stepping back in time. But as I looked around, I noticed a man who seemed to be watching me. He had shaggy hair and a scruffy beard. Now that I think about it, that description just screams pedo. But I was in 5th grade at the time, so obviously I didn't know. But I remember him making me feel uncomfortable. I tried to ignore the man, thinking he was just a weirdo, and focus on the exhibits. But I couldn't shake off the feeling that he was following me. Every time I turned around, he was there. My heart started beating faster, and I felt a knot in my stomach. I knew something wasn't right. I decided to tell my teacher about the man. She listened attentively and looked concerned. She said we should stick together as a group and keep an eye out for any suspicious activities. That made me feel better knowing that she was looking out for us. But as we continued exploring the museum, the man became bolder. He started getting closer and closer to me. His eyes were fixed on me like a predator stalking its prey. I was scared and didn't know what to do. I tried to stay close to my friends, hoping that would keep me safe. Suddenly, the man grabbed my arm and tried to pull me away from the group. I screamed for help, but his grip was tight. I thought this was the end, that I would never see my family again. But then out of nowhere, my teacher appeared like a superhero coming to the rescue. She yelled at the man, demanding that he let me go. He seemed startled by her sudden arrival, and his grip loosened. That's when I took my chance and I broke free. My teacher called for security quickly, and they came rushing over to apprehend the man. I felt relieved that I was safe in her presence. As security took the man away, my teacher comforted me and made sure I was okay. She explained that she had been keeping an eye on me because she had noticed the man acting strangely. She had suspected that something was wrong and had followed us closely to make sure I was safe. I thanked my teacher for saving me, and she smiled warmly. She thanked me for telling her about the man. Otherwise, things would have turned out very differently. The rest of the field trip was a bit scary, but I knew I was safe with my teacher and my classmates around me. We finished exploring the museum, and my teacher made sure we all returned to the bus safely. My parents eventually found out, and my mother almost had a heart attack, and my dad was furious. I'm thankful that I told my teacher when something felt off, otherwise I wouldn't be here right now, and the thought of that scares me to this day. It was fall of my senior year, and our school took us on a field trip to a corn maze. The difference was, it was at night, and they put glow lights everywhere, making it all colorful. We arrived at the corn maze, excited to fool around, knowing this was our last year in high school. We agreed to make the best memories possible out of this experience. We were all told to make groups of 3, and that would be the group that we'd be sticking with the entire trip. I, of course, picked my 2 best friends, who I've known since kindergarten, and we were ready to have the best time of our lives. One of my friends suggested that we'd scare some people, but me, being the overly cautious one, said absolutely not, as it would probably just ruin our trip. Group by group, people started entering the maze. We put glow sticks around our wrists and around our necks, lighting up the night. Our group was next, and we entered. As we entered the maze, the rustling sound of corn leaves filled the air. We laughed and talked, taking turns leading the way, hit a few dead ends, blamed each other for being bad leaders, and just overall having a good time. But then, we started hearing strange noises. At first I thought it was just the wind playing tricks on us, but the sounds grew louder and more menacing. My friends and I started to get a bit uneasy. As we turned the corner, we see a man standing there. He wore a terrifying mask that hid his face, and he held a rusty old knife in his hand. My first thoughts were, is this part of the experience? I quickly realized it was not, as he bolted at us and started chasing us, his heavy footsteps echoing through the maze. We turned and ran as fast as our legs could carry us, desperately trying to find a way out. The corn stalks seemed to close in on us, making it difficult to see where we were going. I can hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. I was so terrified. We zigzagged through the maze, trying to lose the man behind us. Fear fueled our legs, and we pushed ourselves to the limit. We prayed that we wouldn't hit a dead end. Miraculously, we stumbled upon the exit of the maze. We burst out into the open, gasping for breath, and turned to see if the man was still chasing us. But he disappeared into thin air. We stood there trembling and bewildered, trying to catch our breaths. Our mind raced with questions, questioning who the man was, why did he chase us, and more importantly, where did he go? As we gathered ourselves, we noticed the sounds of the corn rustling had faded away. We glanced at each other, unable to shake off the feeling that we were being watched. We cautiously made our way back to the group, trying to enjoy the rest of the night, with the thought of that man in the back of our heads. You're probably wondering why we didn't call the police or told one of our chaperones what had happened. Since the man was probably long gone by now, and we couldn't prove anything, we figured that they would probably do nothing about it. So we decided to keep it to ourselves. As the trip ended, we all gathered at my friend's house to talk about our experience, try to make sense of what happened, but there were no answers. We thought that maybe the masked man was part of the corn maze experience, but as we thought about it more and more, it didn't seem to be the case. We never really told anybody about it. We kind of just kept it to ourselves. Who knows what would have happened if the man actually caught us? That night could have turned out very differently, for all I know.